If I talk about island clans and dispossession, no matter what I say, some people paint their own picture of English kings or noblemen dispossessing and oppressing Hebridean islanders. Now today, I do want to talk about an English king who set out on a brutal plan of dispossession and ethnic cleansing with a little help from his friends. But it started when he was King of Scots. If you're interested in the people, places and events in Scottish history, then click the subscribe button at the bottom right of the screen. In the meantime, let me tell you a story. Now, I want to tell you a story of chauvinistic greed, of self-interested scheming, dishonest dealing, clan rivalry, royal brutality and ethnic cleansing. And of course, it starts in Fife. Now, when I say Fife, I'm not talking about down at heel, ex-coal mining, hard-living sex with your sister Fife. In spite of all the jokes, I quite like those Fifers. No, I'm talking about quaint, picturesque, tourist haven, East Neuk of Fife Fifers. I'm talking about James VI and the Fife Adventurers. Let me briefly summarise the situation for three key actors in this drama. In the 1580s and 1590s, the boroughs down the East Neuk of Fife, Crail here, Pittenweem and Anstruther, even St Andrews, they were the most productive centres for fishing in Scotland. In fact, returns to the Exchequer show that 80 to 92% of the taxes paid were paid from the proceeds of fishing. Now, remember that some of the estates that benefited weren't just temporal, but ecclesiastical. It seems that the ministers of the church weren't only fishing for men. But the fish from which the gentlemen of Fife profited weren't caught out there in the North Sea, but in West Highland waters off the coast of Lewis. Then they were brought here to the lowland east coast. But in 1591 through to 1599, the taxes that this group paid from fishing plummeted to 46% of their total tax take. The gentlemen and churches of Fife were losing money, and so was the king. Where were the fish going? The Fife lairds complained of great extortion used upon them by the MacLeods of the Northern Hebrides. It seems that the MacLeods of Lewis wanted their cut before the king got his. That wasn't good. There may be trouble ahead. Actually, trouble was already here. In MacLeod country, things weren't running smoothly. How many MacLeods of Clan MacLeod can there be? There's going to be some fighting. Why? Well, Roderick MacLeod, chief of Clan MacLeod, married a woman from Mackenzie's of Kintail. But when she gave birth to their first son, Roderick was pretty sure that there'd been a bit of hanky-panky and the bairn wasn't his. So he divorced the wife and sent her and his son back to the Mackenzies. He then went on to marry again, twice, and he had illegitimate children on top of that. He sounds like a bit of a hanky-panky merchant himself. After the hanky-panky came a lot of jiggery-pokery, which included the now adult illegitimate son, assuming that that's what he was, coming over from Kintail with Mackenzie support, abducting his mum's ex-husband, maybe his dad, and locking him up until he agreed to name him as his successor. Long story short, MacLeod of Clan MacLeod has a number of his children either backed by his own MacLeod clan or the mainland Mackenzies of Kintail, all killing each other because there can be only one. So, the Fife fisher gentlemen aren't happy, and the MacLeods of Lewis, and the MacLeods in the mainland, and the Mackenzies aren't happy. What about James VI? Well, he's no happy either. Actually, he's never been happy with the Gaels. a barbarous people with a barbarous tongue. For years, James had been thinking about how he could plant lowland colonies in the islands to civilise them. A bit like the Native Americans or Aboriginal Australians or Indian subcontinent in the future. So, on the 16th of December 1597, an act was passed in Parliament. Clan chiefs would be required to produce valid title deeds documenting the ownership of their territory by the 15th of May 1598. Otherwise, their lands would be forfeit. Now, James knew that these kin-based chiefs would never have documentation like that. The Act also set out plans to establish a borough in Stornoway to tackle the lack of civility. Now, if only there was a group of folk who would have enough of an interest in the resources of Lewis to head off up there and set up a colony and establish a borough in the face of local opposition. Hold on, those Fife fisher gentlemen would become the Fife Adventurers. This is Stornoway on the Isle of Lewis. This is where the ferry arrives from the mainland today, and it's roughly where these Fife Adventurers would have arrived in November 1598. They wouldn't have seen a candle shop, a money shop and an Indian restaurant. I mean, the Indian restaurant was probably there, but it wouldn't have been as welcoming. No, would Sir like some poppadoms and spicy onions while he's waiting? No, 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 no. Oh, it'd be all, I'm Sandeep MacLeod of Clan MacLeod. There can be only none. I'm not proud of myself. What I'm saying is that over there is roughly where the original castle was and where these gentlemen adventurers arrived, and folk were throwing things at them. But 600 troops do give you a bit of leverage, and so they took the somewhat dilapidated castle that sat just there pretty easily, and then they signed up to a set of rules for their joint stock company, which included that there was to be no marriage or other particular friendship to be between any of the society without the consent of the Hale with any Hielandman. No fraternising with the natives. And from this temporary base, they made incursions further into the island in an attempt to colonise Lewis and bend the MacLeods to their will. Now, let's be honest, when clans are divided and a group of gentlemen with military support arrive with royal backing, there's only one way this is going to end. But they were largely confined to this area where they started to build houses, some of wood, others of stone. Now, these houses didn't look like the black houses on the island. They looked like houses of civilised people from Fife. Don't take the piss, don't take the piss, don't take the piss. This probably all sounds familiar. It's the same pattern that played out over centuries. Scots would repeat it in Nova Scotia with disastrous results in Panama, conquistadors in South America, the French in Acadia, the British, well, everywhere. But what seems shocking is that it's perpetrated by one part of our country on another on behalf of the king. As the houses were built around that original castle over by the shore, the soldiers provided protection, and they needed to. There was constant harassment by the MacLeods, largely under Neil MacLeod, the illegitimate son of the recently deceased chief. Now, I say constant, sometimes the lowland planters got support from the Mackenzies across in the mainland, which eased the pressure. Sometimes they got support from elements of the Clan MacLeod in the mainland, who saw their Mackenzie neighbours as a far bigger threat than the planters. There were even times when the MacLeods on the island called a truce. But for 4 years, things swung between guerrilla conflict, factional fighting and an uneasy truce, with a wee bit of backstabbing thrown in for good measure. All the time, James was in Edinburgh complaining that things weren't going fast enough. Remember, his original strategy had been to slaughter the indigenous people and just replace them. Now, the intricacies of the to-ing and fro-ing during those 4 years, and indeed the 10 years after, are too involved for this particular video. But if you want fuller details, then Dr. Anus Bacunic has written an 85-page analysis of the Fife Adventurers and the Lewis Plantation. You can buy it on Brill, and I'll leave a link in the description. Better still, Anus has agreed to sit down with me for one of my conversations with experts in March. So, if you're a Patreon member, please send in any questions that this video throws up about lowland plantations of the Hebrides, and I'll put your questions to Anus. If you're not already a Patreon member and you want to ask questions or access the growing list of conversations with experts, then just click the link up there to join. In 1602, onto the ever-shifting, scheming sands of a Hebridean beach arrived Tormot MacLeod. When the Mackenzies, his jailers for the last few years, let him go and he returned to Lewis, the MacLeods of Lewis rallied. And in March 1602, they attacked the settlement, setting the wooden houses ablaze and killing 50 of the defenders, including one of the principal gentlemen planters. There's one little pig that now wishes he'd built his house of stone. The rest of the colonists had no choice but capitulation and capture. All but 3 hostages were released to return to the lowlands with conditions. All rights to Lewis were to be signed over to Tormot MacLeod, and that would go along with a full pardon from James, of course. And to compensate for their losses, they'd give the survivors a big bag of fish to take back to Fife. The fact that the hostages were eventually released suggests that King James agreed to these terms, but he must have been left a bit red-faced and pretty pissed off. The king and his Fife adventurers had been defeated by these barbarians. Of course, James may have pardoned the MacLeods, but you know that he didn't keep his side of the bargain, and he demanded that the Fife adventurers return. The problem wasn't the idea of plantation and colonising of natives. The problem wasn't the concept of extirpation of a people and a language. The problem wasn't even that he'd overestimated the willingness of the people to be extirpated or the land to produce milk and honey. The problem was a lack of effort of the planters. And so James ploughed on. Twice more, in 1605 and then in 1609, James attempted to drum up new groups of colonists. By the 1605 attempt, he was King of England as well, and the planters had English naval support, and yet failed. In spite of the eventual hanging of Neil MacLeod for fire-raising, murder, theft and piracy, essentially the things that James had intended to do to the MacLeods, the third 1609 attempt was also a failure. It's clear that a different solution was needed, hence the Statutes of Iona. Now, if you want to understand those Statutes of Iona and more of the ethnic cleansing of James VI, there's a video coming up on screen now. In the meantime, ha mi an dóchas gwn bí lama alive. Cheerio and rasta.